Happy Monday, everybody. Welcome to the Last Symptom Monday live stream. Here we are. We made it. We made it to another live stream. It's a beautiful day today. So if you're not here live, I forgive you. I'd rather be out fishing too. Got this new fly fishing rod. I've never fly fished, but my favorite movie of all time is A River Runs Through It, which come out I think in the late 90s. Robert Redford directed it, and it's based on a true story. The McLean family, Norman McLean, and his brother Paul, and their life growing up in Montana and fly fishing. And so I've always had this romanticism about fly fishing. And so I've kind of been on the lookout for a fly rod. And finally I got one. Looks like probably the easiest form of fishing of all time. It's literally just a line that comes out the end of a stick, and you just go like this. You just let the fly tap the water, and you pull it back up. Tap, maybe ride on the water for a little bit. Yeah, so looking forward to doing that this summer. Like I say, it's a beautiful day today. Sky is blue as can be, and all the trees are starting to turn green with their leaves, and so it's a wonderful thing. I hope all yuns out there are enjoying spring. Spring, my goodness, we're already well deep into spring. Can't believe it. Winter it just seems like yesterday. So give you guys some time to get in here. We're doing the live stream a little bit earlier today, and that's kind of as an experiment. I started thinking about time zones and stuff like that. And hello, Penny. Good to see you. Good to see you. Anyway, I started thinking about time zones, and I thought, well, what if I knocked her up a half hour earlier? That would probably be better for me, and we'll find out if it's better for all you folks too. 3 o'clock. That means Old Joy out there, out west, it'd be 12 o'clock for her. Yeah, Penny, it's good to have you here. I wonder how many times. Do you have internet when you're on a flight? Do you typically have internet? I'm wondering how many live streams you've tuned into from 20,000 feet up in the air. Felicia. Well, it's a real pleasure. Most people do discover me by accident. I've been doing this for about 6 years, and that's kind of how people discover me. But it's a wonderful thing to have you here, Felicia. And I see you're on locals with us. So you not only discovered us, but then you ran over and joined us on locals. That's a wonderful thing. I'm looking forward to, as the weeks go by, getting to know you better and your circumstances and everything. Let me tell you something, Felicia. Right now, this live stream is open to everybody. And here in about 20 minutes, I'm going to close her down, and then it'll only be for supporters on locals. I tell you that because if there's anything personal, anything that you would like to keep more private, anything that you would like to reserve talking about to a smaller, more private, close-knit audience, that's what that second half of the show is for, or the live stream. It's not really a show. I'm not here to entertain anybody. Yeah, so just keep that in mind. I'll make an announcement when we're going to go private. For those of you who are watching the live stream here on either YouTube or Rumble, consider joining us over there on locals. You can do that by going to thelastsymptom.locals.com in your web browser. or you can download the really spiffy locals.com app from the App Store, and then just search for The Last Symptom by Brian Barnett within. And we'd love to have you. This is not the only thing we do. This just kind of kickstarts our week. And then we have all sorts of discussions during the week and things like that. Huge library of content in the bank there on our locals group. Of course, you can just go to thelastsymptom.com, and all the links for everything that you need is right there too. So let's see. Let me catch up with Penny. Penny says, not when I'm working. I was asking her if she tunes into the live stream sometimes from 20,000 feet up in the air, the Mile High Club. And she says, not when I'm working, but they're moving me on commercial flights. When they're moving me on commercial flights, I always have internet. I've logged in from all over the world, literally. I always think that's really cool. Somebody, one of our beloved members here on Locals, sent me a picture of her doing the Last Symptom Fundamentals course from Lebanon. And I thought that it's one of my favorite pictures. It's so cool to think. And there I am on her screen. So she's got a picture of her, like her laptop, or it was an iPad or something. And then there she has me, my face, talking from Lebanon on her screen. It kind of blows my mind. Well, I've been having a lot of technical issues lately. Not so much with the live streams. I think we've kind of figured out the live streams here with this new arrangement with streaming out to YouTube and Rumble outside of Locals. But here personally, in my studio here, having all sorts of technical issues. Like, it took me forever to upload the latest podcast for The Last Symptom to the internet, the video version of it, the other day on Saturday. And it's my computer, my laptop is doing something where it's retaining data instead of dumping it. It's just trash data. And because it's doing that, it can't handle large volumes of data that I'm trying to upload to the internet. So anyway, I'm still working on fixing that out. Felicia says she donated $50 and she plans on doing more. I was about to use that money for DBT. Do you mind me picking your brain a little bit here, Felicia? I'm curious. You said you discovered The Last Symptom by accident. How did you come across me? Thank you, by the way, for the donation. I appreciate it. I would suggest, I think, that instead of just donating money to me, see what paid services I offer and use the money that way. That way, you're getting something tailored to you in return, if that makes any sense. But again, I really appreciate the donation. That's what keeps me going. And there's Nana. Hey, Nana. How are you? Good to see you. I was just telling everybody we're doing things a little bit early here today. I wanted to tell you guys about Mike Day. Now, of course, we can talk about whatever you guys want to talk about, as always. But I've got some stuff, and I wanted to know, have you guys ever heard of somebody called Mike Day? Oh, the locals fee. Yeah, okay. Good. Well, then that's the type of thing I'm talking about. That way you get immediate benefits for your support. Mike Day. So here's something I got off of X. I really like X. And you guys remember me complaining about Twitter years ago. That was because of all my problem with it was because of all of the censorship that was going on there. So you couldn't hardly get any information, any trustworthy information off the platform. And then, of course, Musk bought it, and it's called X now. And I don't want to get into a controversial discussion about who likes him and who doesn't. And that's your opinion. Everybody's got their opinions about the guy. I personally, though, really appreciate the fact that now X is a free speech platform, and I go on there all the time. Every day I go on there. I try to get I try to check out conversations from both sides of any argument, and I just it's really insightful. It's like keeping your thumb on the pulse of the world, like what the world is thinking, what they're feeling, and things like that. But anyway, every once in a while, I come across an interesting thing on X, previously Twitter, and I come across this article about Mike Day. I wanted to read it to you, if you don't mind. This is from Miss Facto on X. Miss Facto says Mike Day had been shot plenty of times during his 2 decades as a Navy SEAL, but he had never been hit. That changed dramatically on the night of April 6, 2007. Mike was part of a 22-member assault team tasked with striking an al-Qaeda cell responsible for shooting down several Marine helicopters. Now, by the way, I don't condone war. I'm not trying to glorify war here. There's a point to all this that we'll get to at the end. Mike was the first through the door, and he was immediately met with a hail of bullets by terrorists firing AK-47s and M4 and pistols. Mike was hit, fell into the 10 square foot room. 10 square foot room. He fell in, and it's full of terrorists. Of the 2 Iraqi allies behind him, one was severely wounded and the other was killed. Fellow SEAL Clark Schwedler was hit in the back of the neck and died on the scene. His rifle shot from his grasp. Mike transitioned to his pistol, killed one terrorist, and then engaged a second terrorist who had pulled the pin on a hand grenade. The explosion knocked Mike Day unconscious. Again, I'm not glorifying killing or war or anything like that. It's not the purpose of this. Just keep following me. We'll get to the end here. So Mike's unconscious. He's just been blown up by a grenade, and he's been shot, so many times. And he wakes up and he finds the remaining enemies. They're still terrorists inside this 10 by 10 room, and they're shooting at his comrades. So he engages and he kills the 2 remaining AK-47 wielding terrorists with just his pistol. When the smoke cleared, Mike Day had been shot 27 times. 27 times. 11 rounds hit his body armor, and 16 bullets had entered his body. He said, "Anywhere you can put a finger on me, except my head, I was shot." Miraculously, Mike completed clearing the house and then walked himself to the evacuation helicopter. The total elapsed time of the shootout was 16 minutes. And now here's the part that I wanted you to focus on. Dealing with the things symptom. Mike credits his training and muscle memory for his actions that night. To this day, he believes that a person can train in or out of anything in life. He says, everything you are right now is what you have trained into. And that really caught my attention. Everything you are right now is what you have trained into. Now, the only correction I would make to that is instead of saying what you are, because that when a person speaks that way and hears that, your brain shifts into the mode of looking at yourself as your inherent permanent condition, what you are, right? So what are some of the things you are inherently? You're a person, you're Felicia, you're Penny, you're Brian, whoever you are. We're talking about inherent realities, right? So can you change an inherent reality? No, you can't change an inherent reality. A turtle, for example, is always going to be a turtle. I'm always going to be me. Penny's always going to be Penny. So I would change that. Instead of saying everything you are right now, I would say everything you think, feel, and do right now is what you have trained into. Isn't that true? When we think about the attitudes and the perspectives that we live with in life, where did those come from? We were trained into them. Now, we were trained into them when we were children by our emotional teachers, our parents. But still, it's just training, isn't it? And this guy, who has quite a story to tell, believes that you can break that trend, that you can train out of that. So anything you've trained into, you can train out of, and you can train into something else. And isn't that what we're doing here in the last symptom? That's all we're doing. So just a reminder there that to be careful that you don't begin thinking of the issues you're dealing with as being issues that you are. So let's say that you're dealing with borderline personality disorder, you're dealing with some other emotional disorder. Be careful, really, about in those moments when you're not really paying attention, that your brain doesn't you don't take on the perspective that these things are you. Because if you do that, then what you're doing is you're giving up the idea that you can train yourself out of that. Does that make sense? I I can't train myself out of being Brian Barnett, but I can train myself out of um, anything that I'm thinking, doing, any perspective things. And I can train myself out of that. So that's the objective. That's all we're doing here. Like this Mike Day says. You can break the trend of listening to that voice in your head that keeps you from being what you want to be. And that goes along pretty good. Change your thought processes. That's right. That's right. J. McCullough. Remind me what your name is, J. McCullough. I said I was going to try to remember it last time, but it's been a long week and it's not coming to me. J. McCullough. Change your thought process. Yeah, that's Julie. Okay. Yeah, now I remember why I said I should be able to remember that. Your username starts with J. Yeah, so that goes into the conversation that I had on the most recent episode of Last Symptom Podcast, where I talked about the how you think. The how you think. I might not have spent enough time on that because we spend so much time talking about how you have full control over what you think. But the most powerful thing is probably how you think, not what you think, but the fact that you have full control over how you think. And I don't want to give too much of the show away from this past week for that episode of the podcast because I'd like everybody to see it. But I used an example of anxiety. A lot of anxiety, I remember a lot of my anxiety came from the idea that people were judging me. Maybe I would walk around with that thought. People are judging me. And that was kind of subconscious. I wasn't really aware of it. Hello, Adele. Good to see you. Adele and locals. So let's talk about this anxiety. When I was unhealthy, A lot of it was subconscious. I wasn't consciously really aware of the fact that I was worried about people judging me, but that's what was creating a lot of my anxiety. So let's say you realize that you're feeling very anxious. What's the process for what you can do about that? Well, you can't control the anxiety directly, can you? So you can't just, there's no switch inside of you where you can go, okay, I shouldn't be feeling that. Click, there you go. I don't feel anxious anymore. We don't have direct control over our feelings. But where do our feelings come from? They come from our thoughts. Every feeling that we feel is born of thought. And we do have full control over what we allow ourselves to continue thinking about. Penny says she loves this thought process. This is what I do every day. I'm walking around doing this all the time in my head. And I've never, until this latest episode of the podcast, I don't think I've ever gone through it step by step with the audience. So that's why it's so important. So all your feelings come from your thoughts. We can't control our thoughts, but we have full control over what we allow ourselves to continue thinking. That's important. But let's say that I do an analysis. So I say, boy, I'm feeling really anxious. Where is this coming from? What thoughts am I having? And I realize, oh, okay, I'm sitting around here worrying that people are judging me. I remember, like, if I'd go into a social situation, into a bar especially, I remember going into bars and just, oh man, the anxiety was off the charts. Felt like everybody was weighing me and judging me and looking at me from across the room, and I could feel eyes on the back of my head when I was at the bar. So let's say that you realize what you're feeling. I'm feeling anxious. The next thing to do would be to say, what thoughts am I having that might be creating this anxiety? So then you do that. And let's say that you realize that your thoughts are inaccurate. In other words, once you sit and you analyze it for a second, you realize that those thoughts that everybody is judging you is absolutely not true. There's no evidence pointing to that. Well, what you've done is you've just corrected an incorrect thought. What happens to the feelings then that were being born from that incorrect thought? Well, because you're not having those incorrect thoughts anymore, you have new thoughts. Oh, nobody's judging me. And naturally your feelings change because the anxiety was coming from the old thoughts. Now you've got new thoughts and they have different feelings associated with them. So the anxiety kind of sheds away. But here's the interesting thing that I brought up in the show. What happens if you examine your thoughts and you realize they're completely accurate? Everybody is judging you. Now what do you do? See, now when you've analyzed your thoughts, the thoughts that are creating the anxiety, and you weigh the evidence, you realize my thoughts are completely accurate. Everybody really is sitting around judging me. Now what do you do? Julie says you can correct the thought, but you still have the rush of adrenaline. Not if you've corrected the thought. Not if you really believe not if you really believe the new thought. Hi, Laura. So it's impossible to have rush of adrenaline and resulting heart pounding and nausea without thoughts that people are judging you. I mean, or some other thought that's creating that type of reaction. But if you are truly convinced that these thoughts you were having are false, and you truly have adopted the correct thought that people are not judging me, your body will not continue to react that way. I used to use an example of like a tornado. So let's say that I'm sitting here and you come running in. Brian, oh my God, there's a tornado outside. Well, what happens to me? immediately I feel a panic, don't I? I jump up, I'm spilling coffee all over myself, peeing my pants. I run outside and I look up at the sky and I just see blue sky everywhere. Birds chirping, no wind, everything's calm. I look to the east, I look to the west, I look north and south. There's nothing but blue skies. And I realized that you just pulled a prank on me, right? What happens to the fear and the panic? With my realization that there is no tornado, what happens to the fear and the panic that I was just feeling 20 seconds ago? It goes away. I don't have to control the feelings because I can't control the feelings. Nobody can. But with the change of my thoughts for real, what happens? The feelings change for real. The only reason I would continue to feel panicked and terrified once I run outside and realize and I look up at the sky, the only reason I would continue experiencing those feelings is if I'm still hanging on to the belief that there really is a tornado. You see, because once I'm convinced that there is no tornado, there is no danger, those feelings do not continue to exist. They just don't. So in this case, Julie, if you're saying that you're still feeling the rush of adrenaline and heart pounding and nausea and everything, the only thing that means is that you're not convinced. You're not convinced that people are not judging you. Now, let's get back to the thing before I lose the thread of my thought. The thing I wanted to bring up was what happens when you do an analysis and you realize, yes, people really are judging you. Your thinking is not wrong. Your thinking is not inaccurate. Everybody really is looking at you and judging you. Well, that's where the importance of knowing that you have full control over how you think comes in. And how you think is more powerful, even still, than having full control over what you think. You know why? Because your conversation in your head should go like this. Is it healthy for me to care whether people are judging me or not? Is that healthy? See, now we're not talking about what you're thinking. We're talking about how you're thinking about the thing. And the answer to that question is no, it's not healthy to be concerned about what people think in that way. I'm going to tell you why. But before we do that, I'm going to go to supporters only on locals. We're at about 30 minutes. And I'm going to tell you exactly how powerful this choosing how you think is and how it can completely eliminate the anxiety with time and practice. Hi there, David. Okay, so we're going to go to supporters only on locals. Local supporters only. You folks who are on the other platforms on YouTube and Rumble, think about joining us over on locals. We'd love to have you. We've got a real nice community going on there. All right, here we go.